Hey, Stress here in Berlin, ready to preview Week 6 of the European LCS. And as we crested the halfway point of the split, I wanted to take a look at the standings and see exactly where the teams lie. At the top of the standings, still G2 Esports and H2K are locked into a tie. And our expectations for the old guard has somewhat been dulled here, as Fnatic and Origin hanging out in that 5th and 6th spot. Speaking of Fnatic, we wanted to highlight two key matchups this week, both taking place on Thursday. The first of which is Fnatic versus G2 Esports, our match of the week. And the big story for Fnatic recently has been their substitute in the bottom lane. Cly comes in as the support role, and honestly in the first game seemed to have a decent setup. His thresh was decent, it kind of allowed Fnatic to take the win against Elements. But we started to see a few issues creep into the Fnatic squad against the Unicorns of Love, a game they would ultimately lose on the second day of play last week. And for Reckless, his AD carry alongside Cly, he actually had the best week so far of the spring split. He only died twice, so maybe things do seem to be on the up and up for Fnatic, but time will tell whether it's a fix for the entire team. Their opponents, however, had their own issues this week, as a couple of dodgy team fights. They didn't really get the engages they wanted, actually running kind of a full engage composition. They had the Malphite, they had the Alistar. They just couldn't draw Vitality into the fights early enough to be able to close out the game. And speaking of Alistar, Hybrid there, we've already talked about how there's a new support on the other side of the rift for Fnatic. For G2, Hybrid has been instrumental. He's played a lot of Braum, and his engages typically have been very good, so it was weird to see G2 kind of regress this week. But if they can fix their issues, that's going to be a surefire, interesting match between two teams that realistically are headed for the playoff race. Two other teams that are locked at the top end of the table, Vitality and H2K, follow in the very next matchup. And the biggest story coming into this matchup is for H2K fans, Ryu is back. The unspoken presence in that middle lane that really everybody has touted to be just a big voice in the game. Outside of all of his stats, outside of his performance, he is one of the primary shot callers of H2K and directs a lot of the traffic, the flow of the game. So maybe we'll get to see a lot of that strong macro style, the early rotations, the fast grouping that we saw from H2K in the first few weeks of the spring split. Their opponents, however, Vitality, are coming off the best week they've had so far. A good 2-0 week. Honestly, they looked very strong, and if they're at full strength, we know they're a good micro team. We know their mechanics are very good. Can they cope against H2K's macro style? I'm super excited for Week 6. We got some great games coming up. I cannot wait to see who sits at the top of the table at the end of this week.